I never thought I'd be the guy to have my world flipped upside down by something so cliché. I mean, who really thinks their wife would cheat on them with the barber? Yet here I am, bravely recounting the tale of betrayal, confusion, and ultimately, a bizarre glow-up journey. My name is Jack, and I was living what I thought was a happy life with my wife, Sarah. We had been married for 5 years, and I felt we had built a solid life together. We were that couple, always laughing, always supporting each other. We had our quirks, sure, like how I always had to remind Sarah to put her phone down at dinner, or how she could never find her keys. But I loved her, and I thought she loved me too. At least, that's how it seemed on the surface. Things started to change a few months ago. At first, it was subtle. Sarah began coming home late from her yoga class, which I found odd since she had never been a morning person. I'd ask how it went, and she'd reply with vague answers, something along the lines of, "Oh, you know the usual." I brushed it off at first, attributing it to her busy work schedule as a marketing manager. But then my gut told me something was off. Her wardrobe started to change. I noticed new clothes she had never worn before, tight-fitting dresses and high heels that seemed far too extravagant for her usual casual style. She'd come home smelling like perfume I didn't recognize. I was starting to feel like I was in a bad episode of a soap opera. One evening, I decided to confront her about my suspicions. I had prepared what I thought was a rational argument. I was calm and collected as I asked her why she had been acting differently. That's when I noticed her eyes darting around, avoiding mine. "Jack, you're being paranoid," she said, dismissing me with a wave of her hand. But something in her tone didn't sit right. But the real kicker came 3 weeks later when I was cleaning out the closet. I stumbled upon a receipt for a dinner at a fancy restaurant in town, one that I knew for a fact she had never taken me to. The date on the receipt was the same day she had claimed to be out with friends. My heart sank. The receipt was crumpled like she had tried to shove it into the trash and missed. I didn't need a magnifying glass to see that something was definitely wrong. It was as if the universe had conspired to drop a massive anvil on my unsuspecting head. I confronted her again, this time with evidence in hand. "Sarah, what's this?" I asked, holding up the crumpled receipt, my anger simmering just below the surface. Her reaction was nothing short of defensive. "You're going to trust a stupid piece of paper over me." She spat. This wasn't the Sarah I knew. She started throwing accusations my way, claiming I was jealous and controlling. "You never trust me, Jack. Why would I cheat on you?" she shouted, her tone laced with bitterness. But in that moment the truth became painfully clear. She was. I could feel my heart racing, my emotions shifting from confusion to anger to sadness all at once. It was like a tidal wave crashing down, and I was left gasping for breath in the chaos. I demanded answers, and through her tears and anger, she finally admitted to having an affair. It was with someone I never expected, my barber, Mark. I was left standing there, feeling completely blindsided. I never liked Mark, but I thought it was just my instinct telling me he was a bit too friendly with Sarah. I never imagined he'd become the reason our marriage was crumbling. The emotional weight began to press down on me. I felt anger, betrayal, and a deep sadness all at once. How could she do this to me? The days that followed were a blur of emotions. I felt like I was in a bad dream, unable to wake up. I was angry at Sarah for her betrayal, but I was also angry at myself for ignoring the signs. I wrestled with the decision of what to do next. Should I try to work things out? Could I even trust her again? Or was it time to cut my losses and move on? All of these thoughts rushed through my mind as I tried to make sense of everything. With each passing day, I realized I had a choice to make. I could either wallow in despair or take control of my life in a way that I never thought possible. Sure, it hurt like hell and I was still reeling from the shock, but I knew deep down that I had to come out of this stronger. So how did I handle the aftermath of Sarah's betrayal? I knew one thing for sure. I had to do something drastic to reclaim my sense of self. I decided to invest in myself, to turn this heartbreak into something positive. And that's when I started plotting my revenge, not just on Sarah, but on the version of me that let this happen. I realized it was time for a major glow-up. I was going to show her just how wrong she was to think she could replace me. Stay tuned for what comes next. With the shock of Sarah's betrayal still fresh, I found myself staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, questioning everything about the person I had become. I had always been the average guy, comfortable jeans, a t-shirt, and a mop of unkempt hair that I'd styled myself at home. I thought it was good enough, but clearly it was. If Sarah could find attraction in Mark, my barber with a flashy style and a charming smile, then I had to make some serious changes. I began my transformation with a visit to a different barber. I had heard about this stylist in town, an absolute wizard when it came to hair. Her name was Chloe, and she had built quite the reputation for giving her clients a complete makeover. I called to set up an appointment, feeling an odd mix of excitement and nervousness. This was a leap for me, an investment in my own self-worth. The day of my appointment arrived, and as I walked into Chloe's salon, I was immediately struck by the energy in the room. The walls were adorned with vibrant artwork, and the air was filled with the scent of hair products and coffee. It felt alive, brimming with creativity. Chloe was a breath of fresh air with her bright pink hair and colorful tattoos. She greeted me with a warm smile, and I felt a flicker of hope. I sat in her chair and explained my situation. "I need a change," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "My wife cheated on me with my barber and I want to look my best." I half expected her to laugh or brush me off, but instead she nodded and listened attentively. "First of all, I'm sorry to hear that," she replied. "But you're in the right place for a glow-up. Let's transform you not just on the outside but on the inside too." Chloe got to work, and as she snipped away at my hair, I felt lighter with each cut. We chatted about everything: life, relationships, and how to take control of your narrative. I found myself opening up to her in a way I hadn't with anyone else. She had this uncanny ability to make me feel seen and understood. After about an hour, she spun my chair around to face the mirror. The reflection staring back at me was unrecognizable. I had a fresh cut, styled perfectly to fit my face, and I felt a surge of confidence. "Wow, I look good," I said, unable to hide my surprise. Chloe grinned, clearly pleased with her work, but my transformation didn't stop at my hair. Inspired by my new look, I decided it was time to overhaul my wardrobe. I spent hours browsing through stores, trying on different outfits and finding pieces that made me feel confident. I ditched the baggy jeans for fitted chinos and traded in my old t-shirts for well-tailored button-ups. I even bought a couple of blazers, something I had never considered wearing before. The compliments started pouring in from friends and even strangers. "You look different in a good way," they'd say, and each time my heart swelled with pride. The more I changed on the outside, the more I realized how much I had neglected the inside for far too long. I began working out regularly, focusing on my health and fitness, not just to impress others but to feel good about myself again. As I was busy transforming my physical appearance, I also took time to reflect on the emotional fallout from Sarah's betrayal. I experienced a roller coaster of feelings: anger, sadness, and even moments of nostalgia for our happier times. I found myself writing in a journal, documenting my thoughts and feelings as a way to process everything. I knew I had to confront the deeper issues in my marriage, but for now, I was focused on me. Weeks passed, and I felt like a new man, but I also knew that I needed to confront Sarah again about what had happened. I had avoided her for a while, giving myself time to heal and think about everything. But I couldn't hide from reality forever. I needed to know what she was thinking. Did she regret her actions, or was she still with Mark? I decided to invite her over one evening. I felt a mixture of anxiety and anticipation as I prepared for the conversation. I had transformed myself, but I also wanted to hear her side and understand what had pushed her into the arms of another man. Could we salvage our marriage, or was it beyond repair? As I waited for her to arrive, I couldn't shake the feeling of empowerment that pulsed through me. I was no longer the passive partner who let things slide. I was ready to take charge of my life, and that included finding out if there was any chance of reconciliation. When Sarah arrived, I noticed her reaction to my new look. Her eyes widened in surprise, and for a brief moment, I felt a sense of satisfaction. I was no longer the man she had taken for granted. I was reborn in a sense, and now I was ready to face the reality of our relationship head-on. "Jack, you look different," she stammered, her eyes darting away from mine. I could sense a mix of guilt and regret in her voice, but I pushed that thought aside for the moment. I needed her to acknowledge what she had done before we could move forward. "Thanks, Sarah. I've been focusing on myself lately," I replied, my voice steady. "We need to talk about what happened between us. I'm not here to rehash the past, but we can't ignore it either. You owe me that much." With that, I took a deep breath, ready to hear her excuses, her justifications, and maybe even some honesty. I was determined to get the answers I needed, no matter how hard they might be. This was the moment of truth, and I was ready to confront the woman who had shattered my trust with both a new look and a newfound sense of self. Sarah and I settled into the living room, the air thick with tension. I could see 1,000 thoughts racing through her mind as she fidgeted with her hands. The woman who had once been so carefree now looked like a deer caught in headlights. I had transformed into someone she didn't recognize, and I could tell it rattled her. "Jack, she started, but I cut her off before she could delve into her rehearsed excuses. "Let's skip to the chase, Sarah. You cheated on me with my barber. I want to know why." My voice was firm, but I tried to keep the anger at bay. I needed clarity, not a screaming match. She bit her lip, looking down at the floor as though trying to find the right words in the fibers of the carpet. "It's not that simple," she finally said, her voice trembling slightly. "I didn't plan for it to happen, it just did." I had to suppress my initial reaction of disbelief. "Didn't plan for it, you made a choice to go to him. You chose to betray our marriage," I replied, my voice steady but laced with hurt. Sarah looked defensive, but I could also see the guilt swimming in her eyes. "I know, and I'm deeply sorry. But you have to understand, things between us had been dull. I felt neglected, and Mark made me feel alive again." Her words stung. "Dull? Sarah, I worked hard to provide for us. I thought we were happy. I didn't realize you felt neglected." She sighed, running her fingers through her hair, a gesture that used to comfort me but now felt like a warning sign. "It's not all about you working hard, Jack. I needed emotional support, and you were too busy with your own life. I felt like I was just a roommate at times." Her admission hit me like a punch to the gut. I had been so focused on my career and the routine of life that I hadn't noticed the growing distance between us. It was a hard pill to swallow. "So instead of coming to me about it, you went and slept with someone else. How is that logical?" "I know it's not," she said, her voice breaking. "But when I was with Mark, I felt seen. I felt desired." I took a deep breath, my emotions swirling like a storm inside me. "And you don't think that maybe, just maybe, I could have given you that if you had talked to me? Communication is key, Sarah." Her gaze softened, and for a moment I felt a flicker of the love we once shared. "I didn't know how to tell you. I was scared of hurting you, of breaking us, but I also realize now how cowardly that was." "You broke me anyway," I said quietly, my voice shaky. "And now here we are, standing in the rubble of what we built." We fell into silence, both of us grappling with the weight of our reality. I could see the regret in her eyes, and even though part of me wanted to forgive her, there was another part that screamed for justice. "But Jack," she continued, her tone shifting, "I've realized how much I messed up. I want to make things right. I'm willing to go to counseling, to do whatever it takes to fix this." I studied her face, searching for sincerity. Part of me wanted to believe her, to take her back and put this behind us. But another part, the one that had been truly hurt, screamed at me to be cautious. "Counseling won't fix this overnight, Sarah. Trust isn't something that just comes back after a few sessions." "I know," she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "But I'm willing to put in the work. I love you, Jack. I made a terrible mistake, but I don't want to lose you." Her words felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters, but I was still treading water, unsure if I should grab hold or let it drift away. "You say you love me, but what about Mark? Are you still seeing him? Is this just a ploy to get me back while you're still entertaining your affair?" "No, I swear it's over. I ended things with him as soon as I realized how much I was risking," she pleaded, her voice rising with desperation. "I've cut ties. You have to believe me. I want you, Jack. I want to fight for us." I stared at her, torn between the anger that was still fresh and the love that had so easily swept me off my feet years ago. I thought about the happy moments we had shared, the laughter, and the life we had built together. But I also thought about the betrayal, the feeling of being blindsided. Sarah, I need time to think. You can't just expect me to come back to you after everything that's happened. Please, I'll do anything, she said, desperation etched on her face. Let's try to rebuild. I know it won't be easy, but I love you and I want you back in my life. Her words hung in the air, and I felt the weight of the decision ahead of me. I had changed, and I was determined to not allow myself to be the person who let things slide. I couldn't forget what she had done, but I also knew I had to make a decision that was best for me. Let me process everything, Sarah. I'm not saying it's over, but I need to figure out what I want, including what I deserve. The heaviness of our conversation lingered as Sarah nodded, wiping her tears. I could sense her desperation, but I also felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe there was a path to reconciliation, but I needed to be careful. As she left, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing at a crossroads. I had undergone so much transformation, both inside and out, and it sparked a realization. I wouldn't go back to being the man who let someone else dictate my happiness. I had reclaimed my power, and now I had to decide if I wanted to share that with Sarah or continue forward alone. With so many unanswered questions, I realized that this wasn't just a matter of love. It was about self-respect. Whatever decision I made, it had to start and end with me. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, and I wouldn't settle for anything less than what I deserved. After Sarah left that evening, I found myself pacing around the living room, my mind racing with thoughts and emotions. I had put in so much effort to rebuild myself, and now I was being faced with the reality of my marriage and the betrayal that had shattered it. I needed clarity, so I decided to take a step back, not only from Sarah but also from the chaos of my feelings. That night I poured my thoughts into my journal, detailing every emotion that swirled within me: anger, betrayal, confusion, and even a hint of hope. I wrote about Sarah's apology, the sincerity I had seen in her eyes, and the questions that still haunted me. Could love truly survive such a betrayal? Did I even want it to? The next few days were filled with introspection. I went to the gym regularly, lifting weights as a way to channel my anger and frustration. I found solace in the rhythm of my workouts, and with every drop of sweat, I felt a little more like the man I wanted to be. I had made a commitment to myself to not only look good but feel good inside as well. Eventually, I reached out to a close friend of mine, Tom. He had been my confidant through the ups and downs of my relationship with Sarah, and I knew he would give it to me straight. Over coffee at our usual spot, I laid everything on the table: the affair, the confrontation, and my ongoing struggle to figure out what I wanted. "Man, that's a tough situation," Tom said, his tone serious. "I can't even imagine what you must be feeling right now. But you have to ask yourself, do you think she's worth the risk? Can you trust her again?" I sighed, running my hands through my freshly styled hair. "That's the thing. Part of me wants to forgive her. I want to believe that she can change, that we can change. But another part of me is terrified of getting hurt again." Tom nodded thoughtfully, taking a sip of his coffee. "Look, Jack, at the end of the day, you have to put yourself first. You've done the work to improve yourself. Don't let her drag you back down. If you decide to give her another chance, it better be because you want it, not because you feel obligated." His words resonated deeply. I realized I had been so focused on what Sarah wanted that I hadn't taken enough time to consider what I truly desired. I needed to prioritize my own happiness, and that meant making a choice that aligned with my newfound self-worth. As the days turned into weeks, I continued to work on myself, throwing myself into my fitness routine and self-care. I started exploring new hobbies, like painting and cooking. It felt liberating to put my energy into things that brought me joy. My newfound confidence was infectious, and I began to feel like I was living a life that was authentically mine, regardless of what was happening with Sarah. But the issue of our marriage loomed over me. I had agreed to meet with her again to discuss the possibility of counseling, and as the day approached, I felt a mix of apprehension and determination. I wanted to find a way forward, but only if it was right for me. When the day came, Sarah arrived looking nervous. She had chosen a simple yet elegant outfit, and her hair was styled in a way that made her look different, perhaps even more mature. I couldn't help but notice the effort she had put into her appearance, and it made me realize that she was trying. "Hey," she said softly as she entered, her eyes searching mine for reassurance. "Thanks for meeting me." "Of course," I replied, my tone neutral. "How are you feeling?" "I've been thinking a lot about everything," she admitted, taking a seat across from me. "About us, about what I did. I want to show you that I can be better." I kept my expression calm, wanting to hear her out. "I appreciate that, Sarah, but words are just that, words. I need to see real action." "What do you plan to do to prove to me that this isn't just talk?" She nodded, her expression becoming serious. "I'm willing to go to counseling, and I want to be open and honest about everything. I'll do whatever it takes to regain your trust." I watched her closely, assessing her sincerity. "Trust is earned, not given. You need to understand that this won't be quick or easy. I can't just forget what happened." "I know," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm ready to put in the work. I love you, Jack, and I'm willing to fight for us." Taking a deep breath, I decided to lay my cards on the table. "I've changed a lot since we last spoke. I've been focusing on myself and my happiness. I need to be sure that I'm making a decision that's best for me, not just because I want to make you happy." She looked taken aback, but I could also see a glimmer of understanding in her eyes. "I get that. I won't pressure you into anything. I just want the chance to prove that I can be the wife you deserve." I felt a sense of agency that I hadn't felt in a long time. While I was still hurt, I was no longer afraid of what would happen next. I had taken the steps to become a better version of myself, and now I had the power to dictate my own narrative. "Let's see how counseling goes," I said finally. "But I need you to understand, if you're not fully committed, this will fail. I won't tolerate half-hearted attempts." Her eyes filled with determination. "I promise I'm all in. I want this to work, Jack." As we agreed to take the first steps toward counseling, I felt a mixture of hope and caution. I was ready to see if our marriage could be salvaged, but I was also prepared for the possibility that it might not. Whatever happened, I knew I would be okay. I had discovered a newfound resilience in myself, and I was ready to embrace whatever the future held, whether that was together or apart. The journey ahead would be filled with challenges, but for the first time in a long time, I felt empowered. I had come out of darkness into a space where I could make decisions for myself, and that was the most important part of all. The first counseling session arrived sooner than I expected, and the nerves coursing through me felt like a live wire. I had spent the last few days preparing myself mentally for what was to come. The therapist's office was a cozy space, filled with soft lighting and comfortable furniture, but the ambience did little to ease my anxiety. When Sarah and I arrived, we both exchanged glances that held a mix of apprehension and hope. I was still grappling with the betrayal she had inflicted, but I was also willing to see if we could rebuild our relationship. We were ushered into the therapist's office, and as we settled into our seats, I felt an odd combination of vulnerability and empowerment. This was a chance to voice our pain and work toward healing. The therapist introduced herself as Dr. Emily, and her calm demeanor immediately put me at ease. She began by asking us to share our individual perspectives on the state of our marriage. I listened intently as Sarah spoke first, her voice wavering slightly. "I know I messed up, and I've been thinking about how my actions affected Jack." She started, her gaze focused on Dr. Emily. "I felt disconnected from him, and instead of talking about it, I made a terrible choice. I never wanted it to come to this." As she spoke, it struck me how genuine her remorse seemed. It was a different Sarah than I had confronted weeks ago. Perhaps the reality of our situation was finally sinking in. When it was my turn, I took a deep breath and laid it all out there. I felt blindsided by what happened. It was like being hit by a train I didn't see coming. I was focused on working hard, thinking everything was fine, and suddenly I was faced with the fact that my wife had betrayed me in a way that shattered my trust. Dr. Emily nodded, encouraging me to continue. "I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out what I want and need. I've realized I have to prioritize my own happiness, and I want to know if we can rebuild our relationship on a foundation of honesty and trust." As we delved deeper into our feelings, the session began to uncover emotions we had both buried. We discussed the reasons behind Sarah's actions and the failure of communication that had led to her infidelity. I learned that she had felt isolated in her own struggles, and while it didn't excuse her behavior, it provided a clearer picture of the cracks in our foundation. "Jack, I'm sorry I didn't come to you sooner," she said, her voice steady. "I let my insecurities take over and pushed you away instead of reaching out for help. I see that now." As we opened up to each other, I felt a flicker of hope. We both recognized the need for change, not just for the sake of our marriage but for ourselves as well. I could see Sarah was genuinely committed to putting in the effort to rebuild trust, but I also recognized that this journey would take time. Dr. Emily guided us through exercises designed to improve communication and facilitate understanding. It was uncomfortable at times, but I realized that this discomfort was a necessary part of growth. We were learning to express our emotions without placing blame, to listen without becoming defensive. Over the next few sessions, we continued to unearth issues that festering beneath the surface. We talked about our expectations, desires, and fears. It was liberating to address the things we had previously swept under the rug. I found myself revealing insecurities I hadn't even realized I harbored. In one session, I confessed, "I'm scared that this will happen again. I don't want to be the guy who gets cheated on again." I could see the recognition in Sarah's eyes. She felt that same fear. "That's why we're here," Dr. Emily reminded us gently. "You're both taking steps to ensure that you communicate openly and honestly. Trust will take time to rebuild, but you both have the power to create a healthier dynamic." As the weeks progressed, I began to feel the effects of our efforts. Sarah was increasingly open about her feelings, and I made a conscious effort to engage more deeply with her. We began to rekindle some of the intimacy that had been lost, both emotionally and physically. It was a slow process, but I found myself falling for her all over again, even amid the lingering pain. Of course, there were still tough moments, times when insecurity would rear its ugly head or when old wounds would surface. I had to remind myself that healing wasn't linear, it was messy and complicated. But I was committed, and I could see that Sarah was too. One evening, after a particularly difficult session, we decided to try something new together, cooking dinner. It was a simple act, but it felt like a step toward normalcy. As we chopped vegetables and seasoned meat, the atmosphere gradually lightened. We joked about our cooking skills, and for a moment it felt as if we were rediscovering each other. Who knew cooking could be this fun? Sarah laughed, a genuine smile lighting up her face. "Yeah, but don't get too used to it. I'm still a terrible cook," I joked back, and we shared a laugh that echoed through the kitchen. That night, as we sat down to eat, I felt a renewed sense of connection. Maybe we could find our way back to each other after all. I was beginning to believe that our relationship could be rebuilt, but it would take work and patience. The journey was far from over, but I felt cautiously optimistic. I had learned that love wasn't just about the good times, it was about navigating the storm together, supporting one another through the chaos, and coming out stronger on the other side. As I reflected on how far we had come, I couldn't help but think about my transformation. I was no longer just Jack, the guy who let life happen to him. I had fought through heartbreak, taken control of my happiness, and emerged with a sense of self-worth that I never knew I had. Our story was still being written, but I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that I had the strength and resilience to face it. Whether that meant rebuilding my marriage or embarking on a new journey, I was prepared for the adventure ahead. As the weeks turned into months, Sarah and I continued our journey through counseling. Each session felt like peeling back layers we had unknowingly buried, and the insights gained were both illuminating and challenging. We learned how to communicate more effectively, articulating our needs and desires without fear of judgment. It wasn't always easy, but we were both committed to making it work. One evening, after a particularly profound session, we decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over everything, and I felt a sense of tranquility settling in. As we strolled side by side, I couldn't help but think about how far we had come since that fateful day when I discovered Sarah's betrayal. "Jack," Sarah broke the silence. I wanted to thank you for not giving up on us. I know I hurt you deeply, but you've been so patient with me throughout this process. I glanced at her, taking in the sincerity in her eyes. I appreciate that, Sarah. I'm still learning to trust again, but I feel like we're on the right path. It's not easy, but I'm willing to keep trying. I promise to keep working on myself too, she replied, her voice earnest. I never want to hurt you like that again. Her words resonated with me, and as we continued walking, I felt a sense of hope blooming within me. I was no longer the man who had been blindsided. I was someone different, someone who had emerged from the ashes of betrayal with a newfound strength and resilience. One of the most profound changes was how we approached intimacy. It took time to navigate the emotional hurdles, but we both learned to reconnect in a deeper way. I was learning to appreciate the little moments, the laughter, and the vulnerability we shared. We began to explore each other again, and it felt exhilarating. One night, as we were cuddled up on the couch watching a movie, Sarah turned to me, her expression serious. I want to ask you something, she said, her voice steady. Sure, what's on your mind? She hesitated for a moment, then said, do you think we could eventually get back to where we were? I mean, can you see us moving forward together? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her question. It was a pivotal moment. I had spent so long focusing on my own healing that I hadn't fully considered what our future might look like. I looked into her eyes, searching for the truth behind her words. Honestly, I think we can, I replied. But it's going to take time, and we need to keep working on ourselves individually and as a couple. A smile broke across her face, and I felt a surge of warmth. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, Jack. I know we can build something beautiful together. That conversation marked a turning point for us. We began to set goals for our relationship, envisioning a future filled with love, trust, and mutual respect. We talked about traveling together, exploring new hobbies, and even considering the possibility of starting a family down the line. It felt as if we were finally laying down the foundation of a relationship that could withstand any storm. As the months rolled on, I found myself reflecting on the entire experience, the betrayal, the heartache, the transformation. I learned that love was not just about the good times. It was about facing adversity and choosing each other time and time again. I had emerged stronger not just for myself, but for the relationship we were building. One sunny afternoon, I decided to take a leap of faith and surprise Sarah. I arranged a picnic in the park where we had shared some of our happiest moments. I packed her favorite foods, a bottle of wine, and even a bouquet of flowers. As we sat on the blanket, laughing and reminiscing, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. Jack, this is perfect, Sarah said, her eyes sparkling. I can't believe you did all this. I wanted to celebrate us, I said, my heart swelling with warmth. We've come so far, and I believe in what we're building together. As we clinked our glasses together, I realized that life was unpredictable. It had thrown me into a whirlwind of emotions, but through it all, I had learned the importance of self-respect, communication, and resilience. I was no longer the man who stood in the shadow of betrayal. I was now a man who embraced vulnerability and sought authenticity in all aspects of life. The journey ahead wouldn't be without its challenges, but I felt confident that we were on the right path. I had taken control of my narrative, and regardless of what the future held, I knew that I would face it head-on. Together, Sarah and I had the potential to create something beautiful, and I was ready to embrace that future, whatever it might be. As we enjoyed our picnic, I couldn't help but think that perhaps, just perhaps, love could rise again from the ashes of betrayal, not as it once was, but as something stronger, forged through trials and honesty. I was ready for that journey, and I was ready to take it with her.